Okay, so we're now going to talk about goal setting, which is another of the key functions that we need to learn to be able to operate well in the Learning Centre as students. So goal setting is, well, why do we do it? Okay, what is the purpose of goal setting? We're training students, and that's important. We're training them to use their time well, to value their time. The scripture tells us to redeem the time because the days are evil. So we need to make sure that when the students actually have that time for learning, that they're actually making good use of it. It's very easy to actually sit in the office in the Learning Centre and go into dreamland or have a little snooze or something like that. But setting goals actually adds a purpose to them being there for each day. They've got something that they need to achieve in that day. If we don't have goals, one of the questions I always like to ask is, if you do not use goal cards in your Learning Centre, how do you actually know what your students are doing on a daily basis? How do you know that they've achieved anything on a daily basis? Goal cards are not only for the students, they're also for the supervisor. So yes, they are for training the students. Remember, we spoke earlier today about the fact that it teaches them good time management skills. How do I manage my time? What do I need to do to get this amount of work done in this amount of time? Now, I know one of the things that I have heard, I have a friend who's a lecturer at UNE, University of New England in Armidale in Australia, and even though the university gives ACE students a hard time to get entry, she actually says to me, I love it when your students come through. And I said, well, why? You know, and I'm thinking she's going to say because they know how to write essays, because they're really well mannered, because they're such nice people. But you know what she said? Because they never, ever have a problem managing their time. That's one of the biggest problems that students have in tertiary education, is poor time management. And because our students have learned it all the way through school, they actually have a good understanding of how long it's going to take them to do something and what they need to do to get it done. And so that's a huge advantage in tertiary education. Now, of course, that doesn't go for every child that comes from ACE, but it is something that she's noticed with ACE students. And I thought it was quite interesting that it wasn't the good grammar or something like that. It was the time management that she actually pinpointed as one of the key skills that our students have. So it's important to train the students. They need to know that they have to do some things, that school is not just a place for them to come and sit and hang around with their friends. All of that's good. It's fine for them to hang around with their friends. But the purpose of coming to school is actually to learn. And so they need to we need to have some way of making sure that they're actually learning or making progress on a regular basis. And by far the easiest way I've ever seen of actually making sure that that happens is by using the goal cards. They teach accountability. When I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. We have a society today where our word means very little. If I say, well, if I don't get there, it doesn't matter. If I'm 3 hours late, it doesn't matter, you know. But we should be training our children that when they say it, they're going to do it. That there's some commitment and some responsibility and accountability there. And Goal Cards does that. It makes them accountable for what they do in that learning space. So there's accountability for the student. There's also accountability for the supervisor and the monitor, because each of the children pay to go to their school. The parents pay a fee. So the supervisor has a responsibility not only to the parents but also to the principal and the board of the school to make sure that there is regular progress happening with that child. So it's an accountability also for the supervisor. Now, it's also a great way for the supervisor at a glance to be able to see what is happening with a student. I can go to a student's office, look at their goal card and go, okay, you're struggling with math. Is there a problem here? Because you're going to see Goals not completed, goals not completed, goals not completed. There's obviously a problem in the math. Often students won't put their flag up and say, I need help, because they're just like us. How often do we ask for help? We don't. We're terrible at it, as adults usually. And kids are no different. They won't ask, a lot of them won't ask for help. Particularly you find that children from dysfunctional families will go one way or the other. They'll either ask for help all the time or they won't ask for help at all. So that's something you need to be aware of. But supervisors, this means that if a child is not asking for help, you have another way of actually going, okay, there's a problem here that I need to deal with. So it's a great tool for the supervisor to use. Monitors. It's a great way for monitors to actually know what a student should be doing and to make sure that they are actually doing that. Now, ACE students should only have homework unless they're senior students. I'm talking from the ABCs right through to, say, year 8 or 9. They should really only be taking homework home if they don't finish their goals. Now, that's if they're setting reasonable goals that are going to get them where they need to be. Senior students should probably be taking homework home on a regular basis, but other students should only be taking homework when they haven't completed their goals, unless they're way behind in their work. Monitors, you should be able to look at the goal card and have a fair idea about where each student is at throughout the day. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, we're going to look at that in just a moment. We have two different goal cards. This is the lower primary goal card, and you'll see that this has all the subject names written in. It's got math, English, word building, literature and creative writing, science, social studies and Bible. And you'll see how it's colour coded to match in with the PACES, so that makes it easy for the students to look at. Why do we have a primary goal card? The primary goal card is actually bigger than the other goal card. Why is the primary goal card bigger? Yeah, because usually they write bigger. So I might write 9 like this, but a primary school student or a little one might write it like that. So they need more space because they have less control over their fine motor skills. So that's the reason that we have the bigger card. So again, for students who have difficulty writing, it doesn't matter. They can use the bigger goal card all the way through school. It doesn't make any difference. But it is particularly for the primary and lower primary. So upper primary and secondary student have a smaller card in size, but you'll also notice that there are some other differences. There are no subjects filled in here, and they need to write their subjects in. Now, most of them, if they've come up through using the primary card, will write maths, English, science, social studies, word building, literature, creative writing, and then Bible, because that's the order that they've, grown up with. Or actually, I think they've changed it. Literature, creative writing's in the middle now. It used to be at the end. So most of them will write it in that order. It doesn't matter what order they write it in. It really doesn't make any difference. The thing is, for every subject that they are doing, they need to have it written up here in this top part here, and they need to have a goal for it. So the goal card lasts for 2 weeks. It's double-sided, so there's 1 week each side, and you need to replace them every second week. You can buy them in packs of 50, and they don't cost too much. Who sets the goals? The student actually sets their own goals. Now let me say that, but add, obviously younger students are going to need some assistance, or students with special learning needs are going to need assistance in setting their goals. We need to actually teach students how to set goals. It's not something that they just know how to do. So we need to teach them how to set goals. So the student sets the goals with supervision from the teacher. Okay, how do we set the goal? We use blue pen and we write in page numbers. So a goal is always a specific set of numbers or pages. It's never study or work or, I don't know, review or any of those things. It is always something specific. So students are only allowed to set specific page numbers. If they are doing the literature and creative writing program, which is an extension program, then they need to actually, if they're reading from their book, the PACE will say read pages 5 to 9, then that actually becomes their goal. Read 5 to 9, okay? So that you know that they're actually reading their book and not filling in their PACE that day. And I always used to actually get my children to put test, or we used to put PT for PACE test, but I used to also like mine to put ST if they were doing a self-test, just because it alerts the monitor to know that that the child has a self-test that day and that they shouldn't be leaving the self-test to the very last minute to do. So that's just a learning centre management thing. So mine used to put, you know, if they were doing page 23, and it'd be 23 to ST, which means they'd finish the PACE that day. Okay. All right, so how do we do goals? We set goals by writing specific numbers, and we draw a neat line through each completed goal as we go. So you finish your math goal and you put the line through it, and ACE say that then you set your goals for the next day. Now, I used to actually get my children to wait until the end of our learning centre time before they set their goals. The last 5 minutes of learning centre time was goal setting time. The reason I did that was because if they finished everything, then they could go back and we could extend some goals without interfering with tomorrow's goals. So that's the way I used to do it. You need to work out what works in your context. Goal cards should be neat and tidy because they need to be able to be easily read by the supervisor and the monitor. So you need to discourage them from making a lot of extra marks or drawings or anything else on their goal card. If a child wants to change a goal, that is a supervisor's responsibility because it's an academic decision that you're going to make. So they would raise their supervisor's flag and they would say, may I please change my math goal? I'd like to extend by 2 pages. And the supervisor you can do it one of 2 ways. The student changes the goal card and the supervisor initials, or the supervisor makes the changes in the green pen and then initials. So whichever way you want to do that is fine. But any changes to the goal card should be at least initialed by the supervisor with the green pen. How many pages? This is the age-old question. How many pages should students do each day? That's like asking me how long is a piece of string. It depends with each student. It varies with each student. But there are some averages, and I'm going to give you those averages to answer that question. Please do not decide every child in my learning centre is going to do this every day, because it's not what it's meant to do. Primary students should be looking at doing 3 to 4 pages per subject. That is an average primary student who doesn't have a whole lot of gap paces to do, or who doesn't have any reading problems or anything like that, and who is not a slow learner. They should be doing 3 to 4 pages per subject. But the average can vary per subject and per child. Some children who really, really struggle with math are going to find it really hard to do 4 pages of math. So you're going to have to look at that as per the individual child. Secondary students, they say this is the average, should be doing 3 to 5. Actually, I would imagine that most secondary students actually need to be doing more than that to finish their paces in a reasonable amount of time. So I think that's very, very low average for the secondary students. So that's something that you need to look through and work out, but these are the averages that ACE say are average for these students. So you need to just look at that in context with your students. Okay. This is what is officially called the progress chart, but everybody calls it the STAR chart. Okay. So this is the STAR chart. Okay, we use the STAR chart for academic balance, and I've put that up there because I want you to actually see it. Now, from a supervisory point of view, if I walk into a learning centre, one of the first things that I like to do is to walk around and just look at the STAR charts, because the STAR charts tell me a whole lot of information. Right, if you look at this STAR chart, what can you tell me about Sally's student? I can tell you what grade she's in. Everybody's looking at it. Who can tell me what grade Sally's student is in, or what she's been doing this year?
Can't see it that far. Well, I can see she's done her maths and English.
Okay, so if you look at term 1 here, what do you see here? She's only doing 2 subjects. She's doing 2 subjects. Yes, she's just done her ABCs. So straight away, as soon as I go into the learning centre, doesn't matter which grade it is, I can see that Sally was only doing word building and math. That tells me that she's doing her ABCs. Okay, so straight away I know that she's doing her ABCs. All right, what else can I learn about Sally's student? I can learn that after she's done her maths in her ABCs, there was something happening here and here. We've got big long breaks where she hasn't actually done any math, or she's taken a long, long time to do it. Now, particularly at this grade, they should really be doing a maths pace every fortnight to 3 weeks. They should be doing a maths pace. So, and here you see all of a sudden she found something that was really easy and she's done maths pace in a week. And then we have another 3-week break. So, you know, straight away I'm seeing that there's irregularities in this learning centre in the maths. Is it the same in the other subjects? Well, yes, look at English. We start out okay, but then we've got a bit of a gap here, which often happens during term break. There's a bit of a gap because particularly with little ones, they take a little while to get settled back into the classroom after the holidays. So that's quite normal. But then we have a big long time here where she's not done any tests. And then we have a whole 3 of them together where she's just flown through those paces. So this child is not setting good goals. She's setting very, very poor goals. Now you can see what her favourite subject is. Did anybody work out what her favourite is? Yeah, her social studies. She really likes the social studies, doesn't she? So see how you're learning a lot about Sally just by her STAR chart. Here she's done a whole heap of word building. That was the ABCs. But here, yeah, look at this. So it's very, very erratic, isn't it? And that's something that we need to be watching for. Students that are working very erratically. So there may be a great reason for that. There could be a very, very good reason, but it would lead me to, particularly if I saw that sort of thing on more than 1 or 2 students, it would lead me to actually ask some questions about what was happening in that learning centre and how they were actually setting their goals. So you can learn a lot from a star chart. So it's a really good tool for a supervisor. And you guys, as you're going out to visit schools, that's a real key for you to learn to understand the star chart, so that when you go into a school, you can actually simply quickly look around the offices at the star charts, and it gives you a real feel for what is actually happening in that learning centre. Supervisors, it's a real key for you, and it's a really easy way to check on what's happening with your goal setting in your classroom and with academic balance, to make sure that academic balance is just making sure that they're not getting way ahead in one subject and falling behind in another subject. Now, little children often will go ahead in word building and English, but start to fall behind in the science and social studies, because there's a lot of reading in those science and social studies in those early years. They are actually readers, so that's what their purpose is, to give the children a lot of reading practice. But they're hard to get through when you're little, and particularly if you've got to wait for the supervisor to read to the supervisor, it can be a bit of a problem.
Can I just find
yeah.
out, ideally, would it be that they'd have a star probably every second and third week sort of thing?
Yeah, but they'd be staggered,
I
you know.
realise, depending on some things, but ideally, you know they're pretty well on track.
Yeah, so I mean, it would be nothing to have this sort of thing where they've done maths, English, social studies, science, word building. That would be quite normal to see that. And then, 2 to 3 weeks later, you have that same similar sort of pattern. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But there should be a regularity about it. Now, also keep in mind that some paces require a lot more work than others. So, for example, if you get to those math paces again that have the long division and the long multiplication, then you're going to have bigger gaps in between those, because there's a lot more work required in those paces than in some others. Likewise, when you get to some of the English paces that have a lot of writing exercises in them, they can take a little bit longer too. So it does depend on what's in the pace that they're actually doing. So as the supervisor in the Learning Centre, you get to be very familiar with what the students are doing and with the paces. When I was in the Learning Centre on a regular basis, I could look at them, when I was going to hand them out the next pace, and I think, oh, this is a tough one. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that, because you become very, very familiar with the paces, and then you actually have it in the back of your mind, check on this student because they've got that pace. So, yeah. Did you have a...
No.
Okay. All right. So repeat paces. If a child has to do a repeat pace because they've failed a test, then repeat paces should be done in a shorter period of time. They should actually back off on their other subjects, and they should really concentrate on just getting over that pace. Remember, they've already done it once before, so they should be able to go through it fairly quickly. So repeat paces should be done at the maximum 2-week period. Okay, goal setting. We're going to actually do an exercise with goal cards later this afternoon, which is a little bit more fun and a bit more hands-on. But we're just going to have a look at this goal card. This is actually taken from the procedures manual, so you'll actually see this as you go through procedures manual 1. Okay, so we're going to look at Pudge. If you know the paces, you'll know that Pudge is one of the cartoon characters. So our friend Pudge is a little naughty sometimes. And let's see what he's done on his goal card. All right, so can you see this enough? Is it big enough for you to read? Yeah, good. Okay, so let's have a look in maths. So on Monday, he's got 1 to 3 for maths. Now, just realise that this is being shown without anything being crossed off, so you can actually read it. Okay, so don't worry about he didn't cross it off. Okay, but he did 1 to 3 on Monday, but what's he done on Tuesday in math? 1 page. Now, straight away, most of us would go, that's insufficient goals. And that's what they've got up there. And that is correct. It's insufficient goals unless he is on a very difficult pace.
Yes.
Which in that case, it may be an adequate goal. So we need to always look at these in the context of the specific pace that the child is doing. But you'll see on Wednesday, what's Pudge done? Oops. Yeah, he didn't get it done obviously on Tuesday, so he's just repeated the pace, the page number. There should never be repeated page numbers done by the student. That would be a change that would be required to have the supervisor's permission. So if they didn't get it done here, they would normally get to take it home for homework. But if not, then the supervisor would sign that over and they would be required to do it the next day. Okay. Now, the other thing is if page 4 was such a difficult page that it required only 1 page as a goal, then how is he going to do 4 to 6 there? So they're all things that you need to actually be aware of when you're looking at students' goal cards. English, 1 to 3 on Monday. Oh, I pressed the wrong one. 1 to 3 on Monday, 4 to 6 on Tuesday. We're going great. Then all of a sudden we have study for checkup. Oops. Now, if you have a student who needs to revise for a checkup, I suggest that you do the got a blank, that you actually get them to cross-reference the anything that they've gotten wrong in the pace with the text. So highlighters are wonderful things. Get them to anything they've got wrong, they have to find that answer in the text and they have to highlight that answer. It's a specific thing. So if I was going to set that, I would say revise or cross-reference. I used to just put CR on my goal cards for the kids, CR and the page numbers. Because then it's easy for me to check, have they actually done that? Now, particularly if you're using a highlighter, it's really easy to see if they've done it or not. So cross-referencing is when they actually have to find the correct answer in the text of the pace. Okay.
Great for grade 12 stuff. 11.
Oh, yeah.
I used to say to Elise, highlight your answer.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so literature and word building. Again, we've got a repeated goal here, 4 to 6 and 6 to 8. Now, that could be what you brought up earlier, Stephen, that the score strip is halfway down the page. One of the things that I used to do, because that often happens, and particularly as they get higher up in the paces, what I used to do is if it was the top half of the page, it was A. If it was the bottom half of the page, it was B. So that if that was the case there and it wasn't a repeated goal, then Pudge's goal would be 4 to 6A and then 6B to 8, which means that there's no confusion about what it is that the student should be doing. It just clarifies it. I know this isn't strict ACE procedures, but this is practical about how it works in the Learning Centre. So that way it just means that there's no way that you can accuse the student of an improper goal when they were halfway through a page.
So I think we just would do to the end of the page, go and score down to there even if there's no scoring strip.
Yeah.
And then just circle the page number. So
Yeah.
it's completed.
And that is one way, that's another way you can do it. I actually liked the A and B better because I think it actually, I like them to finish at a score strip if possible. So for me that worked, and it worked really well in the Learning Centre. And even very small children can learn that if you teach them. It's quite simple. Okay, so Literature and creative writing, we're right. Now, you can, which is Pudge's favourite subject?
Science.
Yeah. And how do we know that?
7 to 21.
Yeah. So he's gone really well on Monday and Tuesday, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, that's all good. But Wednesday is obviously Science Day. So we have 4 to 21. Now, if you look at that in context with the other goals that he's attempting to do, that is way too much. Way too much, particularly seeing as science is a subject that is heavily weighted on the reading side. So that would be a goal that is actually way too big. Social studies, this is a really interesting one. We've got 1 to 4 here, 5 to 6 here, and what?
1 to 4.
So did he actually do anything? What's happening there? Straight away, it leads you to ask questions about what's happening with that student and what he's doing. And I'm really glad to say that he got his Bible goals all right. So you can see the goal card can actually tell you a lot about what's happening with the student and the progress they're making. It can also help you if you need to help the student to reset goals if they're not setting goals that are appropriate for them. Okay. What is the result of goal setting? Well, one of the results of goal setting is a strength of character, where we find that students actually learn to do what is right. It's actually at the bottom of the page there.
Oh, okay.
So it's the students actually, we try to teach the students to do what is right because it's right. Okay. It teaches them diligence, it teaches them commitment, it teaches them accountability. You know, I mean, we can just go on and on with all the things that goal setting actually teaches a child and the different character traits that it relates to. And there are a whole heap of them. So it is really important. It teaches them good self-management skills, time management and self-management. You know, I can choose to daydream, or maybe I should do my goals. So that's really good self-management. And it actually tends to increase the lifelong learning of the person. I know people who actually still use goal cards as adults. I mean, we do in a way because most of us write lists or have a diary or some sort of to-do list or something. And that is basically what your goal card is. It's the to-do list for the student on a daily basis. So, you know, it's a good way of managing your life and actually making sure that you do what needs to be done. And of course, students always smile when they set goals. Okay, are there any questions? Is everybody clear on goal setting? You are going to set goals, and it will be a difficult task. It is actually far more difficult than you think to set accurate goals. I don't expect your goals to be accurate. I expect you to make an attempt at setting goals, okay? So that we have something to go on and so that you get used to it. And this afternoon, as I said, we will do a quiz. We'll just do an activity with some goal cards, and you're going to have a look at some goal cards and see what you can find. Okay.